Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the 7th episode on how to make meshes for IMVU. And in today's tutorial, we will learn how to make skirts for a character using Marvelous Designer. Before we start, I also will try to make another IMVU tutorial on how to make skirts for 3ds Max. But in today, we will use the help of Marvelous Designer, and we will learn new tools to make skirts and clothing for IMVU. So let's go ahead and get started. The first thing we need to do, as we always do, load up the character in our viewport. If in case you don't know or you missed that, I will leave a link for this in the description for the last video that we used Marvelous Designer and how we did load the character in here. And once you load up the character, you can always save this as a project. So the next time you want to use it, all you have to do is you're going to go for the open and then for the project from here. So once the character load up, all we have to do now is go ahead for the rectangle, and that's going to be the base of the skirt. And always make sure it lays on the top of her waist, not all the way down here, because that once you start to simulate, the skirt will fall off her hips. So let's go ahead and draw a rectangle here. But for the sake of this one here, I'm going to draw a longer rectangle. And I can also come here from that side and hold on shift and drag this as well. And I'll tell you guys why we do that. So we're going to select the character, the avatar itself, and we're going to hit up to avatar and avatar editor. That place for this here, for the avatar editor, might be different than an older version, but you can always dig in the software and find where this is. Hit to where the arrangement tab is, and by default when you guys open it, you should not have anything here at all. But for what we have here, we're gonna go ahead and add a volume box, and then here you can see that sphere, like the cylinder looking thing, and then we go ahead and lift this up a little bit where her body is. And let's go ahead and start to give this a height of, let's see, I think it was 500. Okay, it's way too much. Let's go for maybe 400. Okay, and then here you can go ahead add this at 150. That's still way too much. You can always left click, not left click, but with the mouse wheel click once and then move your mouse wheel up and down. It will change this value here. And we can go ahead and also increase this one here. The idea of having this slender yellow pounding box is to have it all the way around the character, but not too close, but also not too far. Like here I have this kind of far, so I'm going to change this width with this thing here. And let's go ahead and also take down the height, because what we need is just something hovering right by her body, which is pretty much like that. Okay, so let's go ahead and have this named by left click once here over this, and we can call this female lower body. And it's just going to be a help for us to show us how the actual plane here will go around the avatar. And while we're here, we're going to add a point where it says point here. We're going to add a little point, and if you notice, nothing yet shows up. The reason why, because we have to assign this little point to this bounding box, and what we have to do is go ahead and arrange them in PV and choose the name of the sphere of the cylindrical thing that we made, and notice the dots start to show up. Let's go ahead and reposition this at, okay, I'm going to keep this as 50 and pull this up somewhere. Okay, that looks okay. So it's going to be 70. Maybe it can actually 75 if we can make it. Okay. So if you notice, if let's go ahead and first thing first, close this and go back into the original plane. And to see that again, go ahead and turn it off from the avatar display and then show pounding volumes as well as points. So here we go. So notice here what happened if I select the actual rectangle and start to just hover over that little point. It shows me the plane go all the way around, and that's what we want. And all you have to do while the plane is selected is left click on that little dot. It will take the actual rectangle all the way around. The good about this, you don't have to make multiple patterns to get to each side. It's just going to be one single plane and it'll go all the way around. And it's going to be also good for if you're making like sleeves for a shirt. Will also be the same techniques, which you're probably going to do that in later on tutorials. But now what you have to do left is go ahead for the sewing patterns and select the end of this one here to the end of the other one. And notice if it start to draw like an actual straight line, which is what we want. But let's go ahead and first hide the pounding box as well as the points. And what if we simulate? Let's go ahead and simulate that. See, it start to actually take the shape of her body all the way around like an actual belt. But let's go ahead and select the actual plane one more time. And the reason why we see parts of that plane go inside of her body because we don't have much of density in that mesh. So to do that, while you're selecting the plane, go ahead down here where it says particle distance, and instead of 20, the lower you go, the more density the mesh is going to be. So we're going to go ahead and choose 12. But let me remind you, if you guys using a computer that's kind of slow, do not go down under 5, because under 5 will be adding so many particles in a very small area. And to show you guys this a lot more, we can hit to where it says mesh. If you look closely here, I don't know if you can see it, but let's see if I... There used to be here a way to show how many particles. No. Okay, let's right click. Anyway, but the exceeding number of these of the particles distance do not go down more than 5, because even though they will do, it will remind you, like it give you errors if you go under 5. It might cause the system to crash. So now we have the base of the skirt. Let's go and first resimulate that. And it doesn't really matter it's hovering way over her body, but we can always change that after we make the skirt. So let's go ahead and to make the body of the skirt, here's how we do it. Go ahead and choose circle. You can also use the shortcut E, but we're not using it. Go ahead and left click and drag. That's the actual circle. It might look weird at first, but we can always, take step by step to learn how to make it. Let's go ahead and reposition this right somewhere in the middle here. Let's go ahead and actually, okay. So here, all you have to do while the circle is selected, right click and choose offset as internal line. Go ahead and hit OK. It will show that box. Notice there's another line in the middle start to show up. So the more distance you give it, the smaller that circle is going to get. So let's go ahead and go way down until we see something really close to the center. A little more, I guess. Okay, that looks perfect. So now notice here it started to make like these two and one element, but still this is one individual. So go ahead, while this highlighted in blue, not that one, just this one here, right click again and go ahead and hit cut. And just go ahead and get that little circle, go ahead and delete that one. And here from the 3D view, let's go ahead and move it closer to the body. Rotate it 90 degrees. And maybe just about that here. Move it in and up again. Closer to her hips. Something like that. Okay. Now, if you notice that, let me just move this up a little bit. We have here, if you go to the sewing patterns, and here, we have one segment, 2, 3, and 4. And what we need to sew is this part of that lower part of the base of the skirt, but we don't have an actual, splits here like this one. We need 4. So to do that, go ahead and choose Edit Pattern. Select that edge here, right click, and split. We're not really going to use the split by line or distance, so we're going to be using by numbers. And let's go ahead and give it a 4. You can tell 1, 2, 3, 4, and here is 1, 2, 3, and 4. And that's what we actually need. Go ahead, OK. Now, let's go ahead and add to sewing patterns. And we're going to go ahead and choose this one here with that one. If you notice, it starts to do the straight lines, which is what we used to before. And here is another one. That one is, you barely can see it. Let's go ahead and do as well this. But notice here the line crossed like we did before. To fix that is you choose the actual pattern, and from where it says Edit Sewing, right click. You can even change any of these two, but I just want to use the one at the skirt, so you're going to go reverse. And let's go ahead and add sewing pattern here as well. And see how again, it's crossed. To fix that, right click, reverse, and here it is. Let's go ahead and start to simulate. And there we go, we have an actual skirt. But if you remember when we added this one to be particle distance at 12, it's always a good idea to keep all your patterns have the same particle distance. So select the bottom of the skirt and change this also to 12. And let's go ahead and simulate that again. And it's a lot better, but look at the skirt, it's like still hovering. We can just pull the skirt down a little bit. And okay, that looks a lot better. That's probably way too much. Okay, I think that's a lot better when it comes to look. Yeah, that's a lot better. And now what we have to do is to export the skirt. And to do that, let's go ahead and also hit to File, Export. It's going to be an OPJ file. And here, you can name it female skirt. I already did test one time before I start the tutorial. Let's go ahead and save. And always remember, have to be select all avatar has be unchecked. It's going to be a single object. And weld means that all the parts of that skirt will be welded together. And here it depends on how thick or thin the material you want it. I always use it as a thin. And also unified UV coordinates means whatever you put out here, it's what you will see in 3ds Max. If you uncheck that, you have to take this skirt to 3ds Max and start lay the UV map by yourself. But this is here like an easy step to save you a lot of work in the UV map. And other than that, you don't need to be checking or uncheck anything else. Let's go ahead and hit OK. And in the next part, we will move to 3ds Max and we're going to import our skirt. And we're going to, from there, going to export it to IMVU. Alright, so the first thing you need to do, as always, let's go ahead and open the animation waiting master pose for the female. And remember that it has to be in the same position as the actual character from Marvelous Designer, in like in the shape of a what do you call it, T-pose. And here we're gonna go ahead and choose the 3ds Max, and then gonna go ahead and import. But we're gonna choose non-native file format, and here we're gonna go ahead and import the skirt. And once we're here, all you have to do is hit import, and it should come right on the body of hers. Okay. I forgot to tell you guys that to make this in quads, which is really important, move back to Marvelous Designer. While the skirt is selected, if you go at the very end here, which says miscellaneous, make sure it's set to be a quad. Quad, you probably default you're gonna have this as a triangle, but quads work a lot better, especially with skinning for IMVU and for pretty much anything in general when you make a 3D, like clothing for games or whatever. Most people use quads, so it's a lot much easier and much cleaner when it comes to cleaning geometry. So you always set this as quad, and make sure also to set to be quad as well, and then export it. And once you import it, it'll be something like that. You can even tell how organized the geometry, taking an actual loop here for the skirt. So first thing first, let's go ahead and check our UV map by left click on the actual skirt, and let's go ahead and choose here UV, which is the unwrap. Go ahead and open the UV map editor, and notice here it's exact the same layout that we have done in Marvelous Designer. And that's why we remember when I told you to check the unified UV map, that saved us the actual step of making the UV map layout right. So let's go ahead and right click and collapse to. So the next tool here, which is probably one of the most amazing one that I found out in 3ds Max that I didn't really know if it actually existed. It's a little Photoshop version in 3ds Max. So to find out where this is, you're going to hit up to Tools, and you're going to choose Viewport Canvas. And once you open this up, here you will have the paint. This is the actual default, tools in Photoshop or GIMP. It's going to be paint, erase, clone, and fill, gradient, and blur, like all the tools here. And here's some other ways to how the brush is going to be colors for the palette. And here is going to be, if you want to use the colors, if you want to use one of these texture, the presets they have, or you want to make your own one. And also, if you look here, this is a mask, meaning that anything in black, it will not be paint. Anything in white, let's show you this. Like anything in white, when you're hovering over the actual model, that's where it's going to be painted. So let's go ahead, and while the skirt is selected, we're going to go ahead and choose paint, and go ahead and choose diffuse color. And that's what we always going to be using, especially if you're making like an actual color or texture for a clothing. So let's go ahead and ask you here. All you have to do is like 512 by 512, and you choose the path where you're going to be saving the texture. Let's go ahead and save as, and I'm going to call this IMVU skirt. I already have done here before, so let's go ahead and choose the JPEG, and let's go ahead and save as. Okay, let's go ahead and hit OK. Now, once you notice the actual mask here start to show, the area was going to be painted. But before we start, I need to show you two things. First thing first is like layer dialog. This will open the layer window. Basically, the background is the original texture for this. So let's say you want the texture to be of that skirt to be red. You can always, it's going to be red, but you can always avoid painting on the original layer. So you're going to add a new layer here. So whatever paint is not going to be affecting the original layer. So let's go ahead, while we're here, you can always come here where it says toggle the 2D view, and that's the actual UV map that we have already seen a few minutes ago. And from here you can start the actual color everything. So, but first thing first, I need maybe to color with the black, and then I might also want to go. I can turn on and off anytime because it's always here. And what I want to do now is going to go ahead and get a lighter color, like maybe that kind of dark gray, and change the opacity down to maybe something like 15 or 12. Let's start off with 12, and let's go ahead and change the view a little bit. And from here I start to paint over the, you may not see it, but we can turn off edge faces. But the reason why I want it, because it tells me where the actual curves of the skirt is. So I'm gonna paint over these areas as there's like some sort of lighting casting on it. You can always change the radius, which is the size of the brush, and how hard this is with the opacity. And spacing is basically, it's gonna show you, like, see here there's like a line, it's like straight line, but if you change it to spacing to higher value than this, it will make it like dots following one another, as well as the scattering will be doing the same thing. So let's go ahead and keep painting over the skirt. It's just giving like some sort of shading, like a light and shadow somewhere in the skirt. Okay, let's go around here. And I'll show you the results once we finish that kind of short painting on it. And we got a few more, I guess. One here. Okay, and one here. Alright, let's go ahead and turn off now edge faces. And you can tell it looks really cool, even though it's just a simple painting, like not a special thing to do. Alright, so what you have next, you can add another layer. Let's go ahead and first rename this one by calling this light effect. And here we can call this maybe texture. And what you have to do now is maybe you can drag this down to be lower than the original one. And or we can actually keep, let's see, I should have painted the original one black instead of this one here. So let's go ahead and fix that actually. Go ahead and choose the black color and paint the original layer in a dark black. Oh, I choose the opacity. Okay, and here what we have to do is gonna add the lighter color, and we're gonna start to paint it again. Because I should have really done that, like painting the original, texture in dark black. Then I can do the shading, and also this is set to be 100. Okay, it's set to be 12 again, and start to paint. It's exactly working like a Photoshop, but it's just much easier tools for you to see and use in a single palette. Alright, we're going to go a little bit more. And you can just use a random lines. It doesn't really have to be perfect. If you have Photoshop, you can always go back and use, Photoshop if you know how to edit things. But it's just a really easy tool for you to use within 3ds Max, and also paint over the 3D model, which is probably the best. And here we can go ahead and add another layer. Let's go ahead and rename this first. I'm going to call this light effect. And we can call this texture. Okay. Now we can go ahead and switch back to where it says the color. Left click once. You can use any of these presets, which is I'm sure not gonna use any of these or the ones that you can make. I will make another video on how to make your own texture and basically have you automate the process. Meaning, if you anytime export a map from Photoshop, it will take it right to this folder. And all you have to do the next time you open 3ds Max, all you have to do is like reload the custom maps, and it will be updated right here. So let's go ahead and close this now. Um, I don't really have that much techniques of how to edit clothes or make a texture, but I will use an actual texture that I have, which is hopefully I know where is it. Let's see. To load up a map you have, let's see. Oh yeah, so I'm gonna have to pause the video and I'll pick one of the texture that I have. I'm just gonna speed up the process of the video and I will come back to you at once I load it up here. So here's how I actually load up the texture. I went to Photoshop and I did the action that I built myself, and from there I actually just have to do like the action and save the texture right to here. So I did load up the texture. Let's go ahead and try to see if I can paint over the skirt. Let's go ahead and first increase the opacity, something like maybe we can use 100 for now, but know how pixelated this is because the texture, remember when we did 512 by 512? So maybe this is why. Let's go and increase that. It's still gonna make the same kind of pixelated work. So anyway, let's go ahead and try now to draw the actual skirt. That's supposed to be like a jeans kind of texture thing. Let's see if I can get closer. It's not gonna do much different actually. So I'll continue working on this and paint it all over the skirt, and I'm gonna speed up the process here, and I'll get back to you guys once I'm done. So we're back again, and almost the skirt has been colored, but I've noticed that the color that I chose for the texture is kind of bad. So what I need to do now is to choose the light effect layer, and from here I can just go ahead and choose lighter color like white, and opacity of maybe 25, and go ahead and fill that layer. Okay, some reason it's affecting the actual texture, makes it a lot more that's so weird actually. It makes it a lot more clean, and I actually meant it to be, let me see if I undo that, control Z, and to undo my work. Let's go ahead and clear that. Let's go ahead and clear this, what do you call it, the layer, and I actually might want to use the lighter color as white to do the lighting effect on the skirt. And to do that, let's go ahead and choose the paintbrush again and start to color Let's actually turn off the texture. And we're gonna be just using colors. And let's go back in again and turn edge faces. Probably 25 is way too much. Let's go ahead and change this to be something like 12. I think that's what we did last time. And okay, looks a lot better. And you keep painting over the actual skirt, and then later on you might want to use like blur. That will take the kind of lighting effect much less to make it more realistic. And let's go ahead and do this one more time. And let's go ahead and turn off now the edge faces. And from here we can choose blur and start to blend everything together. As well as here. Just gonna keep doing the rest of it. And I'll try again to see what I did that actually make the texture a lot more cleaner, which is we used fill to do it in the area with the texture. Let's go ahead and use the fill and use the texture. And I don't know if you see it, but it start making the texture a lot more cleaner and gives a lot more like a lot cooler results than I thought I would get. So let's go ahead and now, if you right click on the, let's go to paint again, right click, or oh, here is what you need to do. So you go ahead and save this. You can always use this in Photoshop in layers, the same layers that you made here. It will copy that to Photoshop, or you can use the flat. It's gonna be a bitmap. Basically, it will blend all these two together, all these three layers together, as in one, as it's one. What do you call it? As it's one image, and you will use it from there. So for the sake of tutorial, I will just use a flat and save this as a bitmap. And here I will go and save it in my folder, desktop, and IMVU file. I'm gonna call this. You can also choose whatever format you want to use. I'm gonna use a JPEG, and I'll use this call as IMVU tutorial skirt map, and save it. Once it's finished, we're gonna move to the skinning part. Let's go ahead and close all these now. It will ask you to continue painting. All you have to do, because we're already done what we need to do with this, all you have to do is hit discard paint. Okay, in case if you did this and for accidentally continue painting, it will erase everything you have done here, especially if you haven't saved the actual image. But if you have, like how we did, all you have to do is like discard painting. And let's go ahead and open the material editor, and we're gonna choose the second material. Add for the diffuse map, we check that box, and once it open, we're gonna go ahead and choose bitmap, and we're gonna load our image from the desktop, which IMVU folder, and the IMVU skirt. And what you have to do is left click and drag over that skirt here, and then show. Here it is. Let's go ahead and just make that step ahead. Let's go ahead and get skirt, space, brackets. Make sure the space and brackets comes after. Give it a number. Let's go for 20. Close the brackets. Copy that name here. You can use Control A and then Control C to copy. Back up where it says go to parents, and then here go ahead and paste Control V and then hit enter. So we should save ourselves that step from renaming. Now we're gonna go ahead and select. Let me just go ahead and shade it. Select this skirt, and we can go ahead use skin modifier. And here, all we need to do is to weight this to hips, which is actually the thighs, and let's see if the hips and thighs. And we can also use this one if we want, which is the spine 01. So let's go ahead and add these bones in here. We said spine 01, which is here. And then we can choose the hips and thighs. So thighs here, one. And let's see, hip. And where's the other thigh? Thigh here, and hips. Okay. Let's go ahead and go for realistic. And if we move this timeline, things will be a lot bad when you first start, but this is why we here. First thing first, go ahead and edit envelope. So if you turn on, go under the skin, which is envelopes here, turn on vertices, and left click and drag over these vertices here, and that's gonna go all the way around. But to get a little precise selection, go left click and hold the click here and choose this here. It's like half a square and then triangles. Basically what this is gonna give you like straight lines to select, and then just keep selecting these areas. Double click if you finish, and that selection here, if we move the timeline, we know exactly where it's getting really bad. Let's go ahead and go for the spine 01, and we can increase this a little bit. If you pull that up a little more, you can tell that it starts getting a good shape in most part, but there's still some other parts that are not really the best. But that's okay, we can fix that easy. And then let's go ahead and choose this area here of the hips and thighs. And we're gonna go for the thigh, which is gonna be, I think that's gonna be the right thigh. And we can, oh, that's set to be 100. Okay. Well, let's see if I can, because it's not gonna make that much difference actually. But what we need to do, just to get much easier work, let's go back again to hold on the left click and drag. Make sure that the rectangle is selected. Select every vertices here, and we go down here and choose the paint weight. If you guys remember that from a last video, and we're gonna open that box here, and let's go ahead. One last thing we need to do is to, let me see if I can, okay, not this one here. So basically what you need to do now is to go and look at each selection here and start to use this value of the strength. Hold on shift, remember, hold on shift and control together. They're gonna resize the brush. Hold down control, shift and alt. They're gonna change the strength and how strong the brush is. And here we can make sure if this is on, it means that's gonna smooth out the weighting. If this is set to be 1, it's gonna be pushed out. If this is set to be minus, they're gonna be pushed in. So let's go ahead and start painting over the actual vertices. Let's see. Okay, let me go ahead and because I don't see yet the effect. Let's go ahead and try. If I go in here, okay, that's what I want to see. Which faces again, and go at the very end, which is paint weights. And here I'll start to use the spine 01. Let's go for hips first and add a little more of density here. And we can also add to spine 01. Okay. As you can see, it start to fix the geometry that it should be fixed. And let's go ahead and choose the thighs. Which thigh? I think, no, the hips actually. Okay. We have a little bit. In case you see the brush is too big, again, hold on Shift and Control and use your left click and drag to scale it up and down. We can go ahead and use this thigh here and start to push things up a little, as well as here. Okay, that push in, so I was going for the hips. Okay, go for the thigh again. Okay, that might actually need to be smoothed out, so hold on Shift while you're doing that. Oh, it's still pushing things out still, okay. If it's going crazy like that, make sure to set this, where is it? Let me turn it back on. Oh, here, make sure to set to be something like minus maybe 0.2 and start to move things out per body. There's some of these vertices is not really moving at all. Maybe the reason why, because they were set to be in the thigh. No, it's actually probably the thigh, but it's not really moving at all. Not sure why, but maybe we can use the hip, and we can go here to be 1. Okay, there we go. Actually, 1 might be way too much. Let's go ahead and maybe 0.2 as well. See how this works. Okay, it looks a lot better. Like I said last time, this is probably going to be the most consuming part of making cloth is the weighting part. But you can always learn, the easiest way for you, the best approach. We have already covered like at least 2 to 3 ways of skinning. There's one more or two at least coming in later on tutorials. But probably for me, it's the weight painting is probably the easiest one for me that I use the most time. Because it's a lot easier, like you paint over an actual brush, which is a lot easier. So I'm change to 1 again, and maybe I choose minus 0.2. It's like a changing values, like I said, it's just not really kind of a hard work to do. And let's go ahead and maybe minus 0.5. And if it's still not really shown like that, always change the bones because it gives you like a different effects. Okay, turn on this one. So what I'm gonna do here, I'm gonna pause the video and I will finish the waiting part. And once it's all done and cleaned and tested, we'll move lastly to IMVU and try what we have done. So yeah, see you guys in a minute. Alright, so the skinning part has already been done in 3ds Max, but remember always that you have to test the cloth before you're submitting it, because it doesn't matter if there's errors or gaps in 3ds Max or not, there's always something gonna show up in the IMVU client. So if I move the timeline here for the animation, you can tell that there's like literally no poking through or just a little bit, not much. And if I just go for the back, just go redo this. Like it's not really a big issue, but always test out your cloth. It doesn't matter what it is. And let me remind you also something here. Let me show if I can find if you can see, like here, you might notice this little poking through here. So to fix that, instead of using the, what happened? Okay, instead of using the weight paint like we did earlier here, you can always go in edit envelopes and vertices, checked, and select the bone you want to have the effect, which is probably this. Let's go ahead and select this vertices and see if we can change the way it looks like. And let me see if I can change this a little bit. By going here, selecting the vertices, which is going to be 1 or 2, and then under weight properties, you can also change the effect, which is I might want to try to see if I can make that covered up a little bit. Okay. For this one, it's not probably working well, but I have to try all possibilities. So let's see if I can readjust that one. But again, the best way for making anything, including skirts, remember when I showed you guys in the last video how we can take parts off the body, which might be a good idea for a small skirt. You can always keep the lower part. Let me show you also that. So you can actually keep the lower part of the pelvis and take off the top part. We can do that now, but it's just going to be saving time for the tutorial. So what you have to do now is just going to go ahead and try to export it. Accidentally move it away. So while this skirt is selected, make sure the skin is selected as well. Go under export. And here you navigate to your folder. I have one here, which is skirt. And once it asks you to choose the skeleton, choose the original skeleton, which is you have the XSF, and continue with the exporting. Okay, so it's pretty much done, but you can always keep that open in case you want to adjust anything you see in the 3ds in the IMVU client. So let's go ahead and move to IMVU. Well, before we do, let me show you something that's really annoying. If you ever gonna go to drive from a product, either top or the bottom, there's always something like that short here and that annoying top here. Literally, you cannot really get rid of these two unless you go, for example, for the skirt, we're gonna try to go for the shorts. Notice here, it's on covering on the skirt itself. Like no way that you can tell if the skirt is working or not. So to fix that and get rid of this short, move back to 3ds Max and select the pelvis. And from here, you go ahead and export it as well. And go ahead and name it. I actually have one here, like pelvis, female pelvis, and export it as it is. It will ask you, it's going to be for pretty much the same skeleton, which is, we don't need to do much on it. Okay, now back into 3ds Max, to IMVU, and here, let's go ahead and make sure this 5 is selected, which is going to be by default. All you have to do is add the pelvis instead of the short. So let's go ahead and add it here. Now you can tell it to get rid of the short, but it keeps the pelvis as it is, which is what we want. And on the top of that, you can add another layer, which is, we call that maybe 20, and now we can add our skirt. And here it is. Let's go ahead and add our texture. And again, see, that's what I was talking about. There's always problems with IMVU clients. So there's a big, massive poking through here and a little bit here. But just for practice, you can always go back into this Max and try to fix that. And I hope this tutorial was very helpful. Let me remind you guys, if you want to see more videos, as probably as every week as I can, make sure to leave me a comment and let me know if you guys want to see a lot more videos, like pretty much every week. And for my next video, we will try to make the same skirt in 3ds Max, and probably they're gonna wrap up the clothing, making videos for IMVU, and later on we're gonna be moving to the shoes. And yeah, I hope this was very helpful, and I see you guys on my next video.